Good evening and welcome to today's Tropics for June 27th, 2022. Please note, I'm not a meteorologist and this video is just a collection of my thoughts and opinions about the storms I've been talking about. And for any decision making, please consult National Hurricane Center or your local officials. So we're looking at a burst of activity in the Atlantic Ocean right now. It's pretty impressive for June actually. There's 3 systems right now marked on the tropical weather outlook from the NHC. There's one of them here is a front that extends down in the Gulf, and you can see some scattered convection here. It's nothing really all that strong or organized or much about anything at all. It's just a little bit of scattered convection for now, but it might form into a weak tropical cyclone, given kind of okay-ish atmospheric conditions, but also very warm water. So see what that does, but it's not a huge worry right now. We've also got kind of a wave complex out here in the tropical Atlantic, and that might form into something behind this wave here, and that may approach the some of the Lesser Antilles Islands in about 5 days. So it's worth keeping an eye on that. But the main thing we're watching here is recently upgraded PTC 2, so potential tropical cyclone 2. So this is the main thing. This is going to have impacts much sooner and probably is going to be the strongest system out of the 3 that we're watching. So let's take a closer look at PTC2, and it's not particularly well organized. It's kind of northeast or to southwest oriented wave here. You got some of those south-southwesterly winds on the east side of that trough, and then more northeasterly. So it's kind of tangled up in the ITCZ right now. The convective pattern really isn't all that organized. There's some of it around, but it's not like in a spot where you could obviously see it's trying to get together and trying to get something organized. It's rather disorganized right now, but we are watching for a pretty high chance of tropical cyclogenesis. And one of the signs of that is the wave. It's been kind of trying to tilt upright, because when you have these very elongated sort of waves like these, you tend to have it kind of oriented in a certain direction. Usually it's northeast to southwest like this, but the entire kind of area slowly rotates cyclonically because it is sort of a cyclone, and eventually you have it kind of tilt more and more until it's north-south. And then usually on the northern side, where you kind of have extracoriolis force and more latitude, usually that's where you tend to get a vortex trying to get going on the northern end of that. So that seems to be what we're going to see happen with PTC2, but so far it hasn't happened yet, and it's rather disorganized. We actually had a recon mission going, and that it's also proof that it's basically oriented northeast to southwest here. Not too well organized, obviously. Pressure a bit lower than the surroundings, 1009 millibars. And again, you can see this kind of south-southwesterly winds and the northeast trade winds. There's quite a few of these green barbs, so that is tropical storm force wind, and the SFMR instrumentation also showed some of those tropical storm force winds, so that caused it to get advisories as PTC2. It isn't a tropical cyclone, but there are tropical storm warnings up because of these winds. Now, in the next few days, it does seem that there's some model agreement that we'll see something try to get going as it kind of rotates. Problem is, it's going to be pretty unpredictable what happens, because it's kind of in an area where small changes would mean much larger ones down the road, and that's because it's going quite far south, and it's probably going to scrape nearby the northern coast of South America for a few days. And really, it depends where we get a vortex going, because if it's something like for a tiny bit further south and it goes more inland or something, then it would perhaps dissipate, and once it gets out in the southwestern Caribbean, it would have to reorganize, and that would mean a weaker system overall. But if it went further north and it kind of stayed offshore, you would have a little bit of a land interaction that would kind of keep it down a notch, but it would be over water and it might be able to organize. And once it gets into this area out here, it would have more time to strengthen from a higher floor, and it would be stronger. So it's pretty hard to tell so far. And right now it looks like it'll be pretty close to the coast. So we'll see. There is pretty good agreement it'll be pretty close to the coast. Of course, we don't have a closed circulation, or really, we don't quite know where that will set up. So it's hard to tell right now, but there's decent agreement. It'll be around the northern end, and like two major global models here, the GFS and the Euro model, both agree we'll have it somewhere along the coast by Thursday early in the morning. Thing is, too, the actual conditions aside from the land are actually pretty favorable, especially for this time of year. There's a big anticyclone here that's kind of draped over the north or northeastern Caribbean here, and that means to the south where PTC2 is, there's actually easterly wind, so there isn't really a huge problem with this. The main thing is land interaction, which is probably going to be the main thing keeping it down, because then you kind of have downsloping off the mountains, that there's that sinking air, it dries it out, that interrupts convection, and that would be probably a problem even if it stays a little bit offshore. So that's the main thing keeping it down. But in general, there's good agreement that we're going to be seeing at the very least good upper level environment, and so that makes it even like a bigger difference depending on if it goes a little more south or a little bit more north. And then further down the line, there's it appears that we're going to have a pretty favorable environment in the southwestern Caribbean, and since it's going to be kind of going along the coast or somewhere near that of South America, the system is going to have a couple days over this generally warm water and favorable conditions. So there's been pretty good agreement that whatever comes out of here, even if it's barely a tropical cyclone, it's probably going to try to strengthen to a tropical storm or perhaps a hurricane in these favorable conditions before landfalling, likely somewhere in Central America, probably Nicaragua right here. And so we'll see what happens. And I think uncertainty will probably go way down once we've actually got something getting into the southwestern Caribbean, because main uncertainty is how it deals with this land interaction and how close it is to the actual land. And yeah, again, the upper level environment is still expected to be pretty favorable. Some divergence here up here, and generally an anticyclone to the north, which keeps any westerly shear that you'd usually see at this time of year in the Caribbean mostly at bay. Here's actually a sounding from the GFS on the early morning of July 2nd, so that is Saturday. And yeah, this is pretty good. You have 92% relative humidity, so there's basically no problem with dry air here. That's about as high as you get. And the shear also looks pretty low, 4 knots, maybe a little bit of mid-level shear, because you can see the flow is a little bit weaker at the mid-levels than anywhere else, and the flow at the low levels is a bit stronger, so maybe a little bit of westerly shear at the mid-levels. Let's see what comes of this, but otherwise it's pretty favorable, and I wouldn't see why you wouldn't see even a very weak tropical cyclone getting in this area and strengthening at least to maybe a mid-grade tropical storm. Another variable is the ridge strength. The ridge strength will be a factor in how fast it goes. That has ramifications too, because if it's slower, a slower system generally has a better time strengthening, and a slower system would also have more time over the southwestern Caribbean, so that would give it more time to strengthen. The GFS has a weaker ridge here. There is a pretty strong one still that's going to keep it kind of down here, but it's not quite as strong as some other models, and so it kind of keeps it slower and takes a couple days to get to the landfall. And then there's the European model, which has a stronger ridge here, and that keeps it further down. Actually, has it bend a little bit more west southwest, and makes it make landfall quite a bit faster. So even though it's actually a little bit more well organized coming into the southwestern Caribbean, and the GFS has less time to strengthen, so it can't quite get going as much. However, the GFS has a bit of a bias for keeping ridges weaker, and the Euro model has a bit of a bias for keeping ridges stronger. So it is possible that this is just mostly based on the model biases, and we see something kind of in between that. And that's what the NHC has done with their official cone here. They have it kind of close to the coast, a little bit to the north, but that kind of interrupts its strengthening. I can't really get going too much until it gets into the southwestern Caribbean, where they have it become a hurricane out kind of in the middle of that area. And I would assume that it strengthens a little bit more from that 65 knot forecast it has it on Friday afternoon. But again, the NHC is very good at what they do, but they aren't God. So we'll have to see that see what happens, because again, tiny little changes, like even if it stays inside the cone, it, depending on which side of the cone is on, would have perhaps pretty decent ramifications. So there's a lot of uncertainty for the later term. Probably not worth focusing too closely on that. The main thing is tropical storm force winds as it kind of comes in here and around Trinidad and Tobago and some of the Windward Islands. There's tropical storm warnings up for that area, as it'll probably be there within the next 36 to 48 hours. So if you have any interest in this area and in northern Venezuela, just keep an eye on this. Might see a very strong wave or tropical storm coming through. Not anything particularly damaging, but it probably creates some dangerous conditions as it kind of goes through the area around 20 miles per hour. The next thing that of interest is actually the wave right behind PTC2. And some of the models have been kind of latching on to that and trying to get it going kind of a little bit east of the Caribbean here. And here's the GFS ensemble. Here's the European ensemble. They both have a decent amount of members here trying to get something going. So that's another thing to watch. Not anything that's going to cause threats in the very near future, but it is something that we are probably a good idea to at least keep an eye on it. Fortunate thing for it is that it's not going to have a really good upper air environment because of unlike PTC2, that is, and that is because the PTC2 actually has its own outflow that doesn't cause this to form, but it kind of amplifies an upper trough in the northeastern Caribbean here. And at first that might have actually some favorable interaction with this wave, and you might see some divergent shear and it trying to get going like right east of the islands. The problem is that this upper trough is going to be too strong. It's going to keep going into the eastern Caribbean. And the unfortunate thing for it, again, is it will run out ahead of that kind of anticyclone and the favorable shear. And so it'll probably start getting sheared like you usually expect in the eastern Caribbean this time of year. And you'll probably go from maybe weak tropical cyclone, probably something even like weaker and very sheared, a very weak system coming through the northeastern Caribbean, probably interacting with some of the Greater Antilles. That's a little far out, so it's probably not a good idea to get too wrapped up into that right now. And here in the European model, same sort of deal, maybe even less favorable because the upper trough gets going for even further east. So yeah, it would run into this wall of westerly shear and probably wouldn't do a whole lot. The ceiling for it probably isn't too high unless it really does something east of the islands that's unexpected. Again, not too much of a threat or anything to worry about too much in the near future, but we'll see what happens. And this probably see go a bit more north because of a less weak ridge kind of up here, and so that kind of allows this to gain some latitude. And again, we'll see what happens with that. We're about 5 days out from any first impact, so we'll see if it overperforms or underperforms or what happens with it in the next 5 days. But right now, the main issue is PTC2. We'll be monitoring that next few days, and hopefully the next few days will give us some answers to our many questions about the tropics in the next couple of days. That's about it for today. If you have any questions or comments about my video, please let me know. Thanks for watching.